Have you ever wondered what really happens the moment we take our final breath? Is it eternal silence or the beginning of something far greater? 8 nights ago, in the heart of an ancient cemetery in Prague, I asked that very question, and Jesus himself appeared to answer me. What he revealed shattered everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what waits beyond. This isn't just my story. It's an invitation for you to step into the space between worlds, where every belief is tested and hidden truths finally come to light. 8 days ago, something happened to me that still feels impossible to put into words. I know how that sounds, so hear me when I say this. I swear on everything sacred to me that what I'm about to tell you is true. I was alone in a cemetery in Prague near midnight, sitting on cold stone beside the headstone I had spent 3 years trying to find, the grave of my grandmother. I was weeping, the kind of quiet weeping that comes when grief finally finds its name. And there at the edge of my grief, Jesus appeared and answered the question that has haunted me since I was 7. What really happens when we die? What he showed me didn't just alter my idea of death. It dismantled and rebuilt my understanding of life. Before we begin, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I need to know I'm not alone in this. And if any part of this reaches you, consider subscribing. It gives me strength to keep speaking plainly. I'm recording from a hotel room in Prague, Czech Republic. We just finished some pickup shots for The Chosen. It was 3 a.m. I should have been exhausted, but the things Jesus revealed wouldn't let my mind go dim. Every relationship, every breath, every moment had shifted. To explain how I ended up in that cemetery, I have to go back to the beginning. My grandmother, my Yaya, was the defining presence of my childhood. She taught me to pray, taught me to trust, told me I was cherished and seen. She emigrated from Greece at 16, piecing together a life from small jobs and large courage, managing somehow to cover her grandchildren in a blanket of unconditional love. And then, when I was 7, came the diagnosis: cancer. I remember the hospital light, white and unforgiving, folding itself over her small body like a second sheet. In that room, I met a question that never left me. What happens when someone dies? She held my hand and said, "Little Jonathan, when we die, we go home to Jesus. It's more beautiful than you can imagine. But don't worry about that now. I'm going to fight." And she did, for 8 months. Yet under my pillow at night, I hid a fear that kept me awake. If going to Jesus is so beautiful, why are we all so sad? When she died, sorrow didn't just visit, it moved in. Priests spoke of eternal rest. My parents tried to comfort me with pictures of heaven, but my child heart wanted something specific, something I could hold. What is she doing now? I grew, but the question grew with me. I studied theology, read stacks of near-death accounts, sat with pastors and spiritual directors. I looked everywhere for a map that felt complete. Later, when I was cast as Jesus, I thought maybe inhabiting his words would unlock something. Eternal life, my Father's house with many rooms, the promise to the thief, "Today you will be with me in paradise." But even from the inside of those lines, I sensed an absence, something fundamental I wasn't. 3 years ago, I decided to find my grandmother's grave. She had been buried in Prague near extended family, but our contact with that place had faded. I hired a genealogist. I combed records. I made 2 trips to Prague and failed both times. This most recent shoot gave me another chance, a single free day before the flight home. I chose an old cemetery called Olzhany. With a local guide, I walked 6 hours among weathered names and languages I couldn't read. Light lowered, hope thinned. Then my guide suggested one last section, older plots where many mid-century immigrants were buried. We went, and there it was, a simple granite marker with her name, dates, and a small cross. I fell to my knees and came undone. 30 years of grief, 30 years of asking without resting, everything poured out in words meant for the woman who had loved me, as if I was the only child on earth. I told her about The Chosen, about the ways her faith braided itself through mine, about how often I had wished for her counsel. And then the old question rose up again, sharper than ever. I still don't know what happened to you. What does going home to Jesus actually mean? Are you conscious? Can you see me? Is there anything beyond brain and blood? The cemetery was quiet in that uniquely European way, silence holding centuries. Prague slept. I was alone with the dead and more isolated in my ignorance than I had ever been. So I did what I had never done. I asked Jesus directly. Not as an actor, not as a student, as someone desperate for truth. I looked up, knowing the city glow was swallowing most of the stars, and said, I've carried this for 30 years. I've spoken your promises about eternity, but I still don't understand what happens when we die. I need to know. For my grandmother, for everyone I love, for the day my own breath stops. The wind didn't change. The ground didn't tremble. I started to feel foolish. Then a voice behind me said, Jonathan, turn around. I turned. He was sitting on a bench as if he'd been waiting there all along. No glow, no spectacle, just presence. A man who knew why I had come. You want to know what happens when people die? He said, and it wasn't a question. I nodded, my heart hammered. Then I'll show you, but understand, this will change what you think you know about death, life, why you're here, and what you're training for. He sat on the ground beside my grandmother's stone, as comfortable there as people are in living rooms. Are you ready to see what really happens? I nodded again. Take my hand, he said. We're going to travel. The instant I touched him, the cemetery fell away. Reality tilted, opened, and we were somewhere else. Somewhere that resisted every category I had. Jesus spoke first, letting the strangeness settle. The first thing you need to understand is this. Death is not what people think. Not religious people, not atheists, not even most Christians. What actually happens is more complex, more beautiful, and more purposeful than any human system imagines. I looked around and wondered how to describe the indescribable. It wasn't clouds and hymns. It wasn't fire and torment. It felt like standing inside pure possibility, reality with the dimmer switch removed. Everything shimmered with potential, as if the world I knew had been a sketch and this was the finished painting. Where are we? I asked, startled by how my voice sounded. Clearer, somehow truer. The space between, he said. Every soul passes through here when it leaves the body. Death is a transition, a doorway. What you call afterlife is simply the next movement in an eternal composition that began before birth. As he gestured, I saw currents of light threading the horizon in every direction, each with its own pulse and pattern. Each one is a human soul, he said. Everyone who dies comes through here. And here is the first shock. Death is not punishment, and it isn't an ending. Death is graduation. Graduation? I repeated, feeling the word land with both comfort and challenge. Earth is a school, he said, a training ground. Every life is a curriculum in love, mercy, courage, forgiveness, sacrifice, faith. When someone dies, they're not removed from life. They're promoted to the next level of responsibility. One stream flared with unusual brilliance. He pointed. Not everyone graduates to the same work, not because I'm measuring them against a ruler, but because they prepared for different capacities in the kingdom. I thought of sermons about heaven and hell, saved and lost, binaries I treated as the only map. Are there levels to heaven? I asked. He smiled gently. My father's house has many rooms. I wasn't speaking in decoration. Reality is vaster than imagination, realms to serve, to learn, to love, without counting. We walked deeper into the between. Second shock, he said, turning to me with compassion that steadied the ground under my feet. A soul is not surprised by death. On a level deeper than mind, every person knows when their earth time is complete, when they've learned what they came to learn or reached the limit of what this life could teach. What about accidents? I asked. Children? Tragedies? He stopped and met my eyes. There are no accidents in death. Souls consent at a level of knowing you don't have words for, never for the sake of suffering, always for the sake of love's growth in them and in those their life touches. I felt something open and ache at once. So, my grandmother's cancer was not chosen for pain, he said, but for the courage it awakened, the faith it formed, the love it revealed in you. Third shock, he continued, pointing to a river of light that unfurled like a song. Consciousness does not narrow after death, it expands. What looks like reduction is, in truth, unveiling. They see their relationships truly, the design beneath the noise. Every conversation, conflict, kindness, threaded into formation for love. Fourth, he said, death is both immediate and gradual. The soul arrives here the instant the heart stops. But the work of understanding, healing, and preparation unfolds at a pace fitted to the person. Those who lived awake to the spiritual move easily. Those who denied their depth are startled by their own continuity and need time. He led me to a vantage point where the currents gathered and braided. Fifth, reunion is real but purposeful. Families meet not to reenact nostalgia, but to serve as a spiritual support team. What some call a life review is really a life celebration. Truth in love, learning without shame, joy in growth. He grew quiet, and the silence before his next words felt like a cathedral. There's more, he said, and I knew the ground was about to shift again. The sixth truth, Jesus said, his voice calm yet carrying an unshakable weight, is about what people call hell. Most imagine it as a pit of punishment, a place of fire where I cast souls away. But that image is not true. Hell is not a place I send people. It is a state of consciousness they create for themselves. It is the experience of separation, chosen when a soul resists love, even when love surrounds them. He pointed toward a dim corner of the between. There I saw streams of light circling endlessly, faint and restless. These souls carry the same walls they built on earth: resentment, pride, self-condemnation. They are not imprisoned by me. They are trapped by their refusal to let love in. Yet even here, the door remains open. At any moment, they can choose differently. Hell is never locked from my side. I watch those faint lights circling in their self-made prisons. My old ideas of judgment trembled. Hell wasn't divine rejection. It was human resistance, and even that resistance was not final. Jesus continued, the seventh truth is that every soul sees the full ripple of their life. They watch how every word, every action, every choice shaped others, near and far. This is not judgment as people imagine. It is revelation. A soul beholds how its existence mattered, how its love, or lack of it, spread outward like waves. My thoughts ran to my grandmother. So she knows what her death did to me, how her faith still lives in me. Jesus' eyes softened. Yes, Jonathan, she knows everything now. She sees how her courage gave you courage, how her love prepared you to speak my words with truth. She sees how her life continues through you, and how her death was not an end, but a seed. The eighth truth, he said, concerns reincarnation. Not as many imagine it. Not a random cycle, not a recycling of souls without purpose. Each life is a carefully crafted curriculum. Some souls return to Earth for further lessons. Others move to realms of service beyond the physical. Some become guides and protectors. Some move into roles you would call angelic. Not all return to flesh. Many graduate beyond that need. The word graduate echoed in me. Life was no longer a trial, but a classroom. Every hardship, every joy, lessons designed for growth. The ninth truth, Jesus said, is about time. On earth, you know time is past, present, and future. Here, all are one. When a soul leaves its body, it enters this simultaneity. It can see every part of its earthly story at once. It can even touch and guide what is still unfolding. What you call coincidence is often the quiet work of those who have gone before you. The thought took my breath. So when we feel sudden peace, or when doors open, or when we sense we're not alone, Jesus nodded. Yes, that is love reaching across the veil. The departed do not sleep in silence. They serve, they guide. His tone grew solemn, carrying a gravity that felt eternal. The 10th truth is this: no one dies for themselves alone. Every death shapes the living. Each passing awakens love, teaches the value of time, urges humanity to see beyond appearances. Every departure, however painful, becomes part of humanity's education in love. I felt the weight of it. Death, not as cruel interruption, but as collective teacher. Loss, not meaningless, but bearing hidden fruit. Then his voice softened again. But hear this most shocking truth. Death is not required for such understanding. Everything I have shown you can be known while alive. Eternal consciousness, enduring love, the purpose of suffering. All of it is available to those who open themselves now. That is why I brought you here. Those who fear death, those who doubt love's survival, need not wait until they die to learn. Life itself can be transformed by this knowledge. The space shimmered around us, as if reality itself bowed in agreement. I felt a shift coming, something greater than before. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with tenderness. "Are you ready to see your grandmother?" My breath caught. "She's here? She never left," he answered. "For 30 years, she has been waiting to speak with you." The between unfolded, and before me stretched a garden beyond imagination. Colors brighter than light, beauty alive with movement, air shimmering with love so concentrated it felt tangible. Beneath a radiant tree whose leaves whispered music, sat my grandmother. She rose as she saw me, her face glowing with the same warmth I remembered as a child, but now transfigured by peace and fullness beyond measure. "My little Jonathan," she said, arms open, "I have watched you, and I am proud." I rushed to her, and when we embraced, she was not a shadow, not a ghost. She was solid, alive, more herself than ever before. Tears spilled as I whispered, "Yaya, I've missed you so much." She held my face as she once had when I was small. "I know. I have heard every prayer, every whisper, every longing. Death does not end love. It removes every barrier that once made love imperfect." Jesus stood nearby, his smile gentle, giving her space to speak. She took my hands and gazed into me with infinite tenderness. "The first thing I want you to know," she said, "is that dying was the most beautiful moment of my life. When my body released me, it was like laying down a heavy burden. Instantly, I was surrounded by love so vast, I wondered how I had ever feared. Family was there, your grandfather, my parents, my sister from childhood. But even more, I was held by the love of every soul I had ever touched, including yours." I trembled. "You felt my love?" "Oh, yes," she said, her smile radiant. "A child's love is the nearest thing to divine love on earth. Your prayers, your touch, your presence, these were medicine to me. You carried me when I could not carry myself." We sat together on the bench. She continued, "The second thing you must know is that my death had purpose in your life. It planted in you a question so deep it became your path. Your grief, your searching, your unrelenting hunger for truth, these were the very things that prepared you for who you are today. Without that wound, you might not have listened so deeply for God." Her words struck me like recognition. My fear of death, my endless questions, they had shaped me, not broken me. She smiled, her eyes shining with wisdom. "The third thing, I never left you. I have been beside you at every turning, your graduation, your first role, the day you became Jesus. Every time you felt unexpected peace, every time a way opened, every time you found strength beyond yourself, that was me, loving you from beyond." Jesus joined us on the bench, his presence filling the air with a love that shimmered like light itself. "This is what so few understand," he said. "Love never ends at death. Love only grows stronger, freer, more complete." My grandmother nodded, tears bright with joy. "And the fourth thing, Jonathan, death is not an enemy to fear. It is a doorway to beauty you cannot yet imagine. This garden is only the first step. Beyond it are realms upon realms, ways to serve, ways to grow, adventures of love that will take eternity to explore. Death is not the end. It is the great beginning." I clung to her words, thirsty for them. Yet another question pressed my heart. "But what about those who don't believe?" Jesus spoke before she could answer. "Belief is not the measure, love is. Many who doubt still love greatly, and many who profess faith fail to love. What matters is not what they declared about me, but how they lived love itself." My grandmother's grip on my hands tightened gently. "The fifth thing, Jonathan, everyone you love still on earth will be all right. Death is as natural as birth. When people understand this, they stop clinging in fear and they finally learn to live fully." She led me to a stream, glowing like liquid light. Standing by its edge, she looked into my eyes with tenderness deeper than oceans. And now, the most important truth. Jesus brought you here not simply to comfort you about death, but to change the way you live. When people know death is a passage into greater love, they forgive more quickly, they serve more freely, they love more fully. That is the message you must carry back. Her words entered me like fire and peace at once. When death is rightly understood, life is lit with meaning. Her words lingered in the air like music, resonating in every fiber of me. I felt as if I had been waiting my entire life to hear them. My grandmother's eyes shone with love as deep as eternity. "The sixth thing I want you to understand," she said, "is that my presence has never been far from you. You searched for signs that I was near, but you expected me to appear as I once was, in flesh, in voice, in physical form. But I live now in subtler ways. Every time you felt sudden peace in the middle of your fear, every time strength rose up in you when you thought you had none, every time the right door opened at just the right moment, Jonathan, that was love reaching you. My love, our love." Jesus nodded gently. This is what most people do not see. They imagine the dead are silent or distant, but love cannot be silenced. Love grows louder beyond the veil because it is freed from fear and frailty. My grandmother turned back to me, her smile radiant. "The seventh thing, death is not a thief, it is a teacher. It teaches the living to love more deeply, to hold one another more tightly, to focus on what truly matters. When death touches a family, it awakens them to what life is really about. My own passing did this for you even though you couldn't understand it at the time." Her words cut through me like light. I remembered how her death had forced me to ask questions I would never have asked otherwise, how it had ignited the hunger that had led me here. She took both of my hands in hers. "The eighth thing, death is not the end of relationship. It is the refinement of it. Love does not dissolve, it expands. When I died, our bond did not break. It grew stronger. I have walked beside you every step of your journey, and when your earthly work is complete, we will walk together again without end." I felt tears that seemed to wash 30 years of grief from my soul. The weight I had carried since I was a child was lifting, replaced by a peace I had never known. Jesus leaned closer, his eyes tender yet filled with authority. "The ninth truth," he said, "is that people need not fear their own death, nor despair over the deaths of those they love. Death is not disappearance, it is transition. To know this is to live differently, without clinging, without despair, with courage and freedom. To know this is to be free." The words sank into me like living water. I felt the terror of death, my lifelong companion, begin to dissolve. My grandmother stood and walked to the edge of the shining stream. Its waters glowed like liquid light, flowing as if with purpose of its own. She turned and beckoned me. "The 10th and final thing I want you to carry back is this. What you've seen here is not meant only for you. It is meant to change how you live and how you help others live. When people know that death is not the enemy of life but its doorway, they stop wasting their days. They forgive more quickly. They serve more freely. They love without holding back. That is the gift you must carry to the world." Jesus stood beside her, his presence magnifying the love until it felt like the entire garden pulsed with it. "Jonathan, the message is not simply that death has no sting. It is that life, rightly understood, is preparation for eternity. When people live as if love is eternal, they begin to taste eternity even now. That is what the world needs to hear, not in arguments or doctrines, but in the way you live, the way you carry peace into a world still afraid." I looked at them both, Jesus radiant with infinite love, my grandmother radiant with love perfected, and I knew the garden was beginning to fade. My time here was ending. My grandmother held my hands one last time. "When you miss me, remember this moment. I am not gone. I am simply in another classroom learning other lessons, preparing for greater service. And when your earthly lessons are complete, we will be together for eternity." The light of the garden began to dissolve. The colors dimmed into the shadows of stone. Suddenly, I was back in the Prague cemetery, seated beside her headstone. But everything had changed. The marker no longer felt like a monument to loss. It felt like a doorway to love without end. I stayed there until dawn, speaking to her as naturally as if she were beside me, because now I knew she was. When I returned to the United States, people noticed something different. Dallas said I carried a new peace. Elizabeth asked if something profound had happened. George said I looked as though I had finally found the answer to a question that had haunted me, and he was right. Now I share this with you because I know I am not alone in this. Many of you have feared death. Many of you have grieved without comfort, wondering if your loved ones are truly gone. Hear this: they are not gone. They are more alive now than they ever were. They love you still. They walk with you still. Death is not punishment. It is graduation. It is not separation from love. It is union with perfect love. It is not the end, it is the beginning. But more than that, understanding death rightly changes how we live now. When we know love is eternal, we live differently. We forgive because resentment has no place in eternity. We serve because service is training for greater service. We stop wasting days because every day prepares us for infinite possibility. We stop fearing our own deaths because we know it is simply the next adventure in the eternal story of love. So I pray, for you, for me, for all of us. Father, for every person listening who fears death, who grieves without hope, who questions whether life has meaning beyond its fragile span, reveal to them the truth that death is not the enemy of life, but the doorway to greater life. Let them sense the presence of their loved ones who live beyond the veil. Let them live with peace, with courage, with love stronger than fear, and let them know with certainty that love never dies. What I saw in that space beyond the grave is the truth that sets us free from humanity's oldest fear. You are more than your body. Your consciousness is eternal. Your love cannot be destroyed. Death is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of the most beautiful chapter yet to be written. And now I know, love never dies. It only grows stronger.